Claire, thank you so much for joining us. Claire Walsh is a senior, Dr. Claire Walsh is a senior commercialisation specialist in the life science section from Enterprise Ireland. And I suppose, Claire, probably better if you introduce yourself rather than me butchering it on you.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, so I am a commercialization specialist in Enterprise Ireland. I work in the life sciences division. In my previous careers, I was a medical scientist for a brief period, and I did my PhD in RCSI in breast cancer treatment resistance. So very much molecular biology and in the Department of Surgery there. So yeah, but at the moment, obviously working in Enterprise Ireland, we have a research and innovation division. So Enterprise Ireland's mandate is really to support Irish-based companies to export internationally and to develop jobs here in Ireland as a result of those exports. So our role, and I suppose a big part of what we do is support startups here in Ireland with those startups that have exciting technology, novel technologies, those technologies that have global appeal and have the ability to scale beyond our borders. So yeah, with the commercialization, I guess the Clinical Innovation Award has kind of come through from our commercialization fund program. So will I jump straight into that and talk about the?
Well,
I don't want to over.
I have questions lined up. No,
yes,
go
with your questions.
I just a comment on Enterprise Ireland and what you do and how this ties into this program. The Clinical Innovation Award is you're there to support startups, not particularly, but you do support the ones that are developing tech like med tech and high level or high tech solutions, and almost the first step on that is the work from the COM funds and the COM feasibility funds, and this is kind of where the Clinical Innovation Award sits. So it's really at the starting line if somebody has an idea, and I think you're about to jump into it there, Claire. So I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so I guess to position it a little bit, like if you're an entrepreneur, Enterprise Ireland, our doors are always open for, if you decide to do a startup, you can come in and, we have teams of development advisors who will help you as an entrepreneur get that startup off the ground. And we have funding supports and non-financial supports to wrap around a new idea. However, a really important source, I guess, of those novel, interesting competitive technologies is the university system and the research system. So we have a commercialization fund program that is very much, it's a research grant, but with commercial deliverables and outputs. So we're very much looking for academic researchers who have a lean towards entrepreneurship. And we want them to come and talk to us as well, because instead of jumping straight into that startup, we can fund the technical development of their research and build some commercial supports around it in order to prepare them to spin that out as a company from the university. Where the Clinical Innovation Award comes into play is that, I guess, there is research happening outside of our universities, and the hospitals we have seen is a really good place for us to kind of also cast our eye over to see what's happening there, because a lot of the time what we see is healthcare professionals who are working day to day in their roles and constantly coming up with innovative ways of doing what the traditional or doing the standard protocol, and identifying areas within their own work where things could be improved. And it's really, we want to make sure that our supports are communicated and reaching those clinicians, healthcare providers, everyone and anyone in the health system who may be interested in innovation, and to understand that there is a pathway for them to bring their innovations out of the hospital and into potentially a university partnership and ultimately a startup. So so the Clinical Innovation Award, it has literally come to us with those ideas. We want to hear about them.
And I mean, it's an amazing sort of support system that's there, because it is from the idea right up to establishing quite a large company that has exports and etc. that's out there on the global stage. And interestingly enough, Claire, a lot of a few of the conversations we've had already that are available on or will be available on the YouTube channel, say with the likes of Gary Duffy, Leisha McNamara, and Emer Dolan in Galway, they're crying out to engage with clinical personnel who have the ideas, who understand the needs. They can develop the tech, they know how to do that, but they really do want to meet those people who have the ideas, who know the problems. And it's funny as well the way the system is there to support the startups and the spin-outs. And even speaking with, say, Cormac Farley and Helen Ryan, so they're previous winners of the Cleveland Clinic Award, which is very similar to this. They said that you need to come at it with that kind of end goal in mind, that you are going for a company. It's not a one and done. It's not do the feasibility and, oh, that's great, it's over. It is really the first step on this kind of journey that you really want to bring it forward. And even speaking with Sharusha, who's the lead for a COM fund, the praise she has for the ecosystem here in bringing people along, it's on one of the YouTube videos as well, ties into everything you're saying. So there's concrete examples out there.
Yeah, and I think like a really critical, and in general, for anyone doing a startup, it's not a one-man band. It usually requires a really strong team, and a team that has a real appreciation for collaboration and how collaboration is so necessary, because doing entrepreneurship, doing a startup, it's not easy, but the rewards are so good that it is worth the blood, sweat and tears quite often. So with regards to the Clinical Innovation Award, I guess what we really see works well, and Ireland has such a rich history in medical device development and all healthcare, all different aspects of healthcare. What we see is where we can bring together the clinical expertise, the research and development expertise that we have in our universities, and the commercial expertise from the Irish ecosystem. It's such a strong base on which to start that process of a startup or a spin out. So what we're trying to do with the Clinical Innovation Award is really like foster those collaborations in the first instance. So take your idea, we will give that €15,000 support to just go and scope out that commercial opportunity. With that 15,000, what we usually do is we get some professional consultancy in to kind of take an independent look at your idea, to look at the market opportunity, to look at the competitors, to look at, is this an unmet need, not just for your hospital or for your jurisdiction, but has it got broader, more global appeal? Is the issue something that other clinicians experience globally, or whichever, not just clinicians. And what we want to do then is if all those if that opinion, I guess that independent opinion comes back positively, then we would work with the team, being the original clinical healthcare worker, the research partner, and build some commercial supports that we can bring to the table as Enterprise Ireland, and really look and encourage you to maybe look at putting a research grant around it and trying to develop it up into a more feasible prototype, a workable solution within the university system. So that's what I guess the Clinical Innovation Award at this point is like. Do you have you identified an unmet need? Is there a partner within the university system that could help you develop it? And let's bring that together under the Commercialisation Fund programme.
And for anybody looking to partner up with an academic institution or vice versa, they can come into us in the Health Innovation Hub, and we'll facilitate those connections. And I suppose another huge benefit, Claire, of the feasibility or the Clinical Innovation Award, the feasibility study, is that it is a professional group that go out and do this work. So it saves you, the applicant, that kind of time. You don't have to upskill in all of that in those areas, because it's quite a body of work to do this. So it's a massive benefit, particularly at the start, getting your idea up and going. It's kind of what I like to say is, if you're going to fail fast.
Yeah, and that's the mantra, in the startup world. That really is what people absolutely. That is the way to do it. Fail early, fail fast. There's no shame in it. And I think what a consultancy, what that 15,000 looks like is usually the consultant will go out, they'll do an element of desk-based research, they'll dig into the kind of the clinical issue that has been identified, the solutions that are currently in play, the clinical pathways, the kind of bureaucracy around that in terms of reimbursement and competitors and things like that. And the regulation is also usually a really big thing. But they also, what we want them to do is, we want those consultancies to pick up the phone and interview people, interview other key opinion leaders, both clinically, in industry, in the competitors, you know, a wide kind of range of people, investors as well. Like, is this something that, is this problem in the top 10 problems of a hospital at this point, you know, or is it in the top 20, or where does it fall? Who cares about it? Who's willing to solve it? Who's willing to put their shoulder to the wheel at this? And that's where even, yeah, so with regards to the Innovation Award and the Feasibility Grant, there isn't a huge amount of heavy lifting for the applicant to do. We would like them to kind of maybe jump on some of those phone calls with the consultant and maybe, you know, make references and build that network for the consultant to kind of dig into a little bit more. But there is no requirement, there is no body of work for the applicant to do at this point. It really is like, what we want to hear is about, you know, the ambition that they might have going forward to actually look at developing this in a meaningful way. And the consultancy is the first step on that. It's a way for Enterprise Ireland to kind of, we'll get those reports back. We can kind of do our own due diligence internally and be like, yeah, do you know what, this is worth a further investment.
Yeah, no, that's it's just such a super support. I suppose I'll ask now, what Enterprise Ireland, the team there, you guys will be reviewing the applications that come in. You know what you're looking for. What are you looking for?
We are looking for problem solvers, really. We are looking for solutions. I think it's interesting. We fund a lot in the healthcare space. So we see a wide variety of projects, and we have funded a wide variety of projects. So there is no one size fits all. It really is. And it's interesting with regards to healthcare, it is surprising sometimes the lack of innovation in particular spaces. You know, there can be clinical pathways and protocols that are undisrupted for the last 20 years, you know, and it's not necessarily fit for purpose, but it's the gold standard is the gold standard because nobody has thought to change that. So what we're looking for is, you know, again, people working at the front line who are experiencing frustrations, problems that have no solution. Is there ways to do things better, way to do things more efficiently, where to generate innovation, and ideally with cost savings, so that what you're trying to develop has a value proposition, not just for patients, for clinicians, for the payers. You know, it's ideally it's a solution that might tick a box for everybody. Those are the ones that stand the greatest chance because the value appeals to everybody. But it really is, yeah, have you thought of a better way of doing things? And I guess again, because we're Enterprise Ireland and what we want to support is very much geared towards our global ambition and our ability to, you know, develop products and services that are of interest globally, not just our market here is too small. So I think the first thing is this a problem for you just in your role, or is this a problem globally or in other healthcare systems? And that's a really good starting point because, and a lot of the time, you know, healthcare is standardized to some degree. So quite often if you are experiencing frustration in a particular area, then chances are others are too. And it's having those solutions that have a global appeal. That is, I guess, one kind of foundational piece of advice that we look for in Enterprise Ireland. But also I think it's the team as well. It's important. People are always at the core of this. So it's the team behind it. So again, quite often, you know, if you're in the hospital system, you may not have those relationships in the university. You might not know who are the research groups out there that could help you. And I think we're so delighted that the Health Innovation Hub is running this award this year, because obviously, Steve, you and your team, you're at the epicenter kind of that university system and the hospital system. So certainly if you're unsure as to what team you might put around this from a technical development point of view, who might build your first prototype, who might like dig into the science with you, then you can go to Steve, or you can come to I'm one of 15 here in Enterprise Ireland on the commercialization specialist team. We have a ton of connections. We know most of the research groups in Ireland, and we'd be more than happy to make introductions. And I should say that the technical transfer offices in the university systems are a really integral part of this as well, because they're great at that matchmaking piece as well. So absolutely. If you're not sure, you know, the application date is still quite a while, or the closing date is still quite a while away. We are more than happy to have chats with you and support you in trying to make those connections.
Yeah, brilliant. And we spoke with Fanula Brown from the Tech Transfer Office here, and I suppose she be kind of representative of all the tech transfer offices, and they really just want to hear people who have ideas, and they'll point you in the right direction. They know their universities, their IoTs, and their technical universities very well. Speaking with Cormac Farley the last day, the way he put it about the market, the reach, and I thought it was quite succinct. It was he said, I don't just want to help my patients, I want to help as many patients as possible. And that was really kind of the core to him understanding how big the problem was, so that he could make a solution that would address that problem for as many people as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, you know, everything that we fund has mass appeal. You know what I mean? It's important that whatever you're working or whatever you're trying to develop can be slotted into other healthcare systems and for the benefits of other patients. And broadly speaking, there is so much standardization in healthcare that is easily done. But again, it's about understanding exactly. Sometimes the problem, you know, is it a problem for the clinician, or is it a problem for the patient, or is it for both? You know, and it's to really dig into, to truly understand whose problem it is and who's going to appreciate the solution most.
Yeah. And that's it. And there are other stakeholders too, that when you start digging, you get a real sense of, you know, how many people are impacted by it. How developed should a solution be, Claire?
Yeah, so look, I think again, unfortunately, it's not a one size fits all. We have projects that come in and they have been developing solutions for 10 years. They've gotten different research grants and they've brought it along in a particular way. We also have projects where they just have a really strong commercial case. There is a really defined unmet need. This is an obvious solution, and they go to the research lab and they really start building from scratch. So it's having the balance. You need to. We can fund things at a very early stage if the commercial opportunity is strong. And vice versa, we can, if the technology developed to date is strong and the commercial opportunity is at an earlier level, it's just a matter of wrapping the different supports around it to make sure that it comes through. But we really look at all these things in the round. So again, if you have no technology built or no prototype at this point, it's how, you know, it's to get an understanding of, okay, well, what can you do in a year? What can you do in 2 years? What can be developed? You know what I mean? And what can you leverage within the research and development system that we have here in Ireland, and, you know, with X amount of money and X amount of time. And then we kind of evaluate it from that perspective. But certainly, you know, we do proof of concept funds as well, where you get a little bit less money, you know, might give you money for a year, and okay, what can you do in a year? See how far you go and come back to us. And then we can come back in again with maybe another grant. So it's not a one size fits all. And that's why I think, like I said, I'm one of 15, and we are all here to kind of case by case give the best advice we can.
Yeah, and you're all contactable. It's up there on your website.
We have it on our website. All of our details are there. We're separated out all over the country. Kind of within life sciences, there's about 5 or 6 of us, and we have manufacturing, engineering, ICT, and food as well. So, but I think it's probably the life sciences team that's most relevant to today.
Yeah, we'll stick with that for now. I suppose you've spoken about the sports that are there and how projects you know, evolve or how they get assessed. Would you mind giving you know, a couple of examples of projects that you've supported?
Yeah, well, I guess I think you said Sarusha has given has been part of this series. So I work Sarusha and Dr. Fergus McCarthy from the Cork University Maternity Hospital. They're actually in my portfolio. They have a commercialisation fund application at the moment. And I remember, I mean, it must be 3 years ago when I first met Fergus, and he, I think, had just moved home from the UK. So he is a clinician in Cork, gynecologist down in obstetrics and gynecology. Sorry, I'm not entirely sure of his
I,
official title. I don't want
I
to
don't know either.
say
So
anything
yeah.
incorrect, but he's in the obs and gynae space down in Cork University Maternity Hospital, and he had just moved home from London, and again was just very much interested in research. They have a solution that they are seeking to disrupt cardiotocography as the gold standard in fetal monitoring. So this was a space that Fergus was really passionate about. He had just moved back to Cork. He was lecturing in UCC as well. So he was kind of, again, one foot in the hospital system, one foot in UCC, and was really just looking at ways to kind of start getting some research funding into his area. And he started off with a feasibility grant. He had an idea, started off with a feasibility grant, which we funded again, which is essentially the Clinical Innovation Award. It is that same grant. And from there, he started talking to his technology transfer office in UCC, and they hooked him linked him in with a lab in Tyndall just down the road, he was looking at kind of sensor development, and they have a lot of expertise in Tyndall in that space. So he ended up partnering with a research group in Tyndall, and his original, I guess, prototype, or the technology he was kind of suggesting, was not actually what they went for, because when the research group got involved, they had, I want to say, better ideas, or a different way to approach it given the expertise that they have. And together, the two of them, or Fergus with the group in Tyndall, came in and put an application in for the Commercialisation Fund. They were really lucky to also entice Sarusha Pillai, who had been a BioInnovate Fellow out of NUIG, to join the team. She was really interested in healthcare and had a really strong commercial experience in medical device. So again, it's those kind of three legs of the same stool. It's the clinical, it's the research, and it's the commercial. And they just built this team together, and it really was just kind of going out, having those conversations locally, meeting different people, and kind of finding that chemistry between the three of them that has worked really well. And they're about a year into their funding application now, and they will probably it's going really well. Sarusha, they've won a number of awards already. They've gone on a couple of accelerator programs, and we'll probably fund them hopefully for another year or two, to get them to the point where they can credibly spin out of the university and start gaining some traction with investors. But for that group, their ambition is to form a spin-out company and to really develop this and take it the whole way to market. They're very passionate about the solution that they're developing. So I guess what we're trying to do is, we're trying to replicate that kind of process that Fergus and Sarusha and Ray went through with the Clinical Innovation Award. And we're trying to put a little bit more structure around it and proactively go into the hospital system looking to repeat the success that we've had with that particular project. Because I think when Fergus came to us, it was he was just a clinician who had kind of just looked around to see what might be available to him. Whereas with the Clinical Innovation Award, we want to go to the clinicians and tell them what's available. So that's, I think, a good example.
And it is a great example, and unfortunately we spoke with Sarusha as well, and her passion for the project is it just comes through when she's talking about it, and she speaks a lot about the team and the importance of the team, first and foremost, that their expertise are complementary, but also that they get along. So it works.
And that's it's really important. It's like a marriage in many respects. Do you know what I mean? You have to, the chemistry has to be right. And, everyone's bringing different expertise to the table. And I think that's really important for those who are I guess, who we're trying to target in the Clinical Innovation Award. It's like, you don't have to know everything. You need to know you need your expertise. That's what's of value. And those other expertise we will pull all those around the table, but you don't have to know everything. It's you are master of your own domain in that respect. And that's the value that you bring. And there is a real need for that in what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. And a lot of people that we've spoken to, they do say, back yourself, give it a go.
Absolutely.
You'll never know unless you try. And, if it doesn't work, so what? Try again, try something else.
And I think it's important to note, I guess, really when it comes to the say, if they do the Clinical Innovation Award and a positive kind of opinion comes back that this is something worth pursuing, it's something that Enterprise Ireland should invest in, you know, it's a lot of the time nobody is required to step out of their full-time job. You know, we work with all of the applicants, the researchers, the healthcare workers, and the commercial people to what can you contribute to the project. So there is no requirement to come onto a project 100% of the time, or even 50% of the time. It's like, what can you know, where in the project and at what point and inflection point is your expertise needed? And we work that through in a project plan in advance of going in for an evaluation. But it's just to say that, of course, we don't expect anybody at this point to be stepping out of any job, you know, into a project full time. That's all to be ironed out in the future.
No, and it's a really good point. While this, again, I've said it a few times, this is just getting you to the starting line, and then you figure it out, you know, hand in glove with the funders, the supporters, your team, the universities, etc.
And I think, again, us as commercialization specialists, unlike some other funders in the system, it's not, we are very high touch. It's a lot of hand holding. It's a lot of like helping you craft those drafts. So it's not that, you know, when you come to either this feasibility or the Clinical Innovation Award application or the larger application after that, we will review that in advance with you. We will give you advice. We will have a chat, give our opinion and give our guidance on that. So it's not that you have to come to Enterprise Ireland's, you know, the application system, press submit without having talked to anybody. That's not what our role is. That's not our process. Our process is that we will have multiple conversations with anybody who's interested in our funding program in advance of them hitting that submit button. And that's what our job is. And we really encourage people to take advantage and pick up the phone or the Teams, as it is these days, you know what I mean? And get in touch with us. We're more than happy to have those chats, you know, have a coffee, talk through, ask all the stupid questions, ask, you know, look for all the advice you need. It's our role to provide that.
And that's a brilliant point. You're there to help people succeed.
Yeah. It's
not a black hole where people throw their ideas into. If it's a good idea, you're there to work with them, put those supports around them, as you said, from a funding perspective and from non-financial, which is what you've just kind of described there, to help people get these ideas up and running. Claire, last question, then we'll go to the attendees for a few questions. What advice would you give to anybody who's applying for the Clinical Innovation Award?
To apply, I think. Just don't overthink it, you know, talk to us, just tell us what you're thinking about and just apply. Don't, like I said, you know, we are not particularly focused on publications or, you know, achievements to date. And, you know, there is no hard and fast criteria for us, apart from the fact that you have to have a research partner, because we can only facilitate this grant through a university partner. So you have to have that. But even if you don't have that at this point, come and talk to us and we can network you in where we can. You know, we will do our best to facilitate any connections that we can. So I think it really is, the application is really, it's straightforward. And yeah, just tell us your story. Tell us you know, you don't have to write it in highfalutin scientific language. Just tell us the story. Tell us what problem you're experiencing or what you have knowledge of and how you think it can be done better and what technology you'd leverage around it. And that's the starting point. So, you know, quite often, like with entrepreneurship, you know, sometimes it's not always the first idea, it's the second or third idea, but it's, you know, it's engaging with it in the first instance. And yeah, we are always happy to talk to anybody. And sometimes maybe we're not the right pathway at this point for anyone, but we will certainly do our best to signpost you in the direction that's best for you at this point. But absolutely, just apply, engage, read the application, ask the questions. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. No, you've said it. That's it. Just like apply, and you're dead right. Claire, thank you so much for your time. This is been really insightful, and hopefully for those who are listening or who are watching this again at another time, we'll get a better idea of what you're looking for in terms of the ideas that they're putting forward. We do have one question from Adi Stack, and I guess this one's directly for you, Claire. And it's about the way is the life sciences team subdivided into particular areas such as medication or surgical, etc. And I guess that's from your work.
Not really, no. We are more divided on geography at the moment, but certainly everyone on the team is a scientist by trade, or not sure we have medical backgrounds, but it's science, it's life sciences. So we are all kind of technically scientists. So what we will do is, depending on, there's generally someone on the team with some experience in some particular area. So if, for instance, something came in pharmaceuticals or pharmacology, that is not necessarily my strength, but one of my colleagues has a really strong background there. So I will always work with her on projects that come in. So we kind of will support the projects to the best of our abilities, with the strengths we have collectively as a team.
Yeah, and it is. I saw a document that's available online. You can see all of you guys, your areas that you're in, whether it's life science or food, and your kind of the locations that you cover. So it's available.
Yeah, we
there.
have a website on the Enterprise Ireland website. There's a Commercialisation Fund program page. So I would encourage you, actually, I don't have the links, but I don't know, I'll send them to you, Steve. Maybe you could drop them into the chat or something afterwards. And we also, on our Enterprise Ireland Global Ambition site, we also have a page there. So the two are linked, but you can see on the Global Ambition site, you can see case studies of other researchers or research teams that have gone through the commercialization program. Fund program.
And that should be kind of helpful for anybody who's
it just gives you a little bit of a better idea. But all our guidance documents are there. It just gives you a little bit better idea of what we're trying to achieve with the larger grant. But like I said, to focus on what today is about, it's just the Clinical Innovation Award. And that really is just, it's a starting point. It's just, it's the first step on a very interesting road.
Yeah, there's another question here. I think this one's more for me. It's can the universities, I suppose, support the applicants to quantify or qualify the benefits and help them then to gather data evidence on the outcomes or changes? So I guess that's in relation to the project you're thinking about, or the problem and solution you're working on. We can, if you just get in touch with the Health Innovation Hub, we can give you a hand on that. We also have a how-to guide on the website as well that kind of breaks down how to go about gathering that kind of clinical evidence and the market research, etc. Fairly high level, but we can help.
Yeah, and I think, one thing I should have also said is it's always really helpful for us if somebody is putting in an application or they want to have a chat about it, an idea. It's well, who else have you talked to, in a particular therapeutic area, or who is experiencing this problem? How have you validated that problem? And I think, a lot of that will be, that's commercial work. And again, it's not necessarily for the role of the clinical person to do that, but at this very early stage, it's good for us to be able to see, oh, you've actually looked outside your own hospital or your own specialty or, network, and have asked the question of others. You know that this is a problem experienced by X, Y, and Z, so sometimes that can be just delving into your own network, but to have some sense that you've talked to someone about this, and there's been some sense of validation that people are of the same mindset. I think that's always really helpful.
And there's a good book, it's quite accessible, called The Mom Test as well, where when you're approaching people, this is one that anybody I speak to in Enterprise Ireland always recommends it to me. When you're speaking to people, it kind of brings you through the process that you're not straight out telling them what you want to hear. Yeah.
Don't you think this is a really good idea? Yeah, it basically, and it's so interesting of how we ask these leading questions. It really is to ask about their problems, not tell them about your solution. So it's a good book to read. It's Rob Fitzpatrick, and we have copies of that in Enterprise Ireland we can share with anyone who's interested. But it's just to have socialized your idea, a little bit broader than yourself.
And I suppose it's fair to say, for some people, they might be holding on to their solution for fear of it being copied or taken. And if that's the case, speak to somebody like in the Health Innovation Hub or tech transfer offices, or Enterprise Ireland, to get a feel for what you can and can't talk about. But if you're in doubt, just speak about the problem and validate the problem, and make sure that that's that people are looking for a solution, and then get the right kind of advice on your own solution. But generally at this point they're so early that
it's so early
not.
And I think it is important, though, I guess, the Commercialisation Fund program, it's public monies, so when we fund anything, it is important, I suppose, even at this point, to say that any rights to the intellectual property around that idea will be held by the university. So we can only facilitate this grant through a university partner, and that's why you will have to have, if you wanted to develop it further, you have to really have identified a Irish research partner, and that's how we can actually provide the funds. But for everybody, sometimes people want to hold on to their own, the intellectual property. If they want to retain that themselves, then that's a different route, and probably the Clinical Innovation Award is not the road you want to go down to. You probably want to go straight to our startup teams and look, about setting up your own business based on that. But in the first instance, if it is something that you want to see developed, and want access to this kind of funding, then just to make that point that all of the IP will be officially owned by the university partner. But this is something that is completely common in how we support our spin-out companies, and quite often that IP will be licensed into a company that you spin out at the end. So
it's unique in one sense, and it's common within its own uniqueness, because there aren't any other countries that I'm aware of that provide these type of supports where you can bring your idea into the academic system, get public funding at zero risk to you, where you don't have to put your own money into it, to get that kind of breathing space to develop some specialized piece of technology, and then spin that out into a company where you're the person who can license that technology from the university, and probably an exclusive license under good conditions with the university, and then bring that company forward as a normal company. And the risk is it's just such a good system. The benefits are, they absolutely outweigh any kind of perceived notions of losing IP or anything like that. I think it is a fantastic support system.
No, absolutely.